Now we welcome back to the stage Mark Allen, plus a special invocation from the Reverend David Steinley, a retired priest and a resident of the Summit at Bettendorf, a Wellspire community.
All right, once again, thank you so much for joining us. So before we bring Father up, we've got a few more gifts to give away. I think we have one more gift basket, 2 more books. So Father had a great idea. Number 75, commemorating the 75th anniversary of Wesley Life. On the back of your name tag, your lanyard, if you have number 75, raise your hand, please. And then we will do number 243, 75, 243, and then we'll do the number 20. 75, 243, and the number 20. Let me see if I'm a winner. No, we're not going to do number 20. We're going to do number 506. Sorry about that. Oh, I win. This is great. Wonderful time. So raise your hand. 75. Shannon, what 243? What did I say? And then 25. 20? Done. Number 20 right over here. Close enough. 75. So no one has 75 on the 75th anniversary? We don't have 75? That should be 150. Oh, 150. Look at you. Right there. Yes. All right. There we go. Congratulations. All right. So to get the event started in the proper way, this afternoon we have Father David Steinley with us. He's going to offer the invocation, a retired priest from Davenport, one of the first residents at the Summit of Bettendorf, which opened up last year. Father Steinley, thank you so much. We'll welcome you up to the stage.
Let us bow our heads. God Almighty, today's occasion is one of celebration as we gather to thank you for the achievements of the past 75 years of Wesley Life. Dedicated to the health and well-being of human life, we wish to honor those who have pioneered to assist in formulating Wesley Life communities and have displayed the insight to reimagine the future of aging. As we celebrate our past, we say thanks for what has been. As we plan for the future, we say yes to what will be. Instill in volunteers and team members zeal for their changing efforts, and let them know they are both valued and appreciated. It is a privilege for all of us to be here today as we together strive to make this world worthy of the elderly. United in prayer, we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father. Now, sitting there, talking, walking around a little bit, it's absolutely wonderful to see this space filled with meaning, connection, people that have made their lives the mission of Wesley Life, those that are living in Wesley Life communities, every single person playing a role in what has happened over the next 75 years, and then looking forward to the next 75 years. Everyone in this room is certainly part of history that's being made right in front of us. Now, for me personally, very quick story. My father decided to move from Iowa City, which is where he had taught at Iowa City Regina for 40-some years. I think he taught full-time for 40 years and then another 10 or 11 years as a substitute teacher. So he was roughly 77, 78 years of age when he fully retired from teaching. And my wife and I were very blessed. We have 5 children altogether. Noah's 18, he's heading off to college. Stella is 16. Henry is 13, and then we have twin identical boys, Max and Charlie, who will be 11 here in a month. Actually, side story there, my oldest son one time asked me, he said, "Dad, if you would have had the twins first, would you have had other children?" And I said, "You know, buddy, sometimes we should not ask questions if we're not ready for the answer." So Dad, he was going up and down Interstate 80 for basketball games, soccer games, dance competitions, band concerts. So we just kind of figured him on Interstate 80, those days were coming to an end. So he moved into Park Center. And I really hope this next joke comes off well, because my brothers and I have laughed about it a long time now. So about 2 months ago, I called Dad up and I said, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And he said, "Oh, I can't go to lunch today." I said, "Why not? What's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm getting on a bus. I'm going to the mall, and then we're going to go out to dinner." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Who's going?" And he said, "Well, it's me and 10 ladies." I've been in Allen for 53 years. My whole life I've been in Allen. It took me 34 years to find one lady who would go out to dinner with me. At 82 3/4, Pop has 10. So I said, "Well, have fun." I called up my younger brother, Andy, who refused to believe me until he called Dad, and then Dad told him the truth as well. It's a wonderful place. I can't imagine having Dad in Newton at any other spot other than Park Center. The accessibility, the friends that he has met, everything there, we could not have asked for a better place to put Dad. And it's just been awesome. We've got a video that we would like to share with you right now. And it's a 3-minute video. It's a short video, but it talks about the past. But it's also, perhaps more importantly, it talks about the vision of the future. And that's the theme for the year: celebrating our past, reimagine our future.
The movement of life can be measured by the good we do for the world. The seeds that shaped Wesley Life can be traced back to Methodist Church founder John Wesley, who inspired us by advising, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can." The movement of life can start from humble beginnings. A quiet resolution was passed in 1946 by the Iowa Des Moines Conference to establish a home for the aged. A year later, in 1947, the deed was signed for the Westchester House, locally referred to as the Chamberlain Mansion. It was here that Wesley Acres was founded, and the seeds were planted for Wesley Life. The movement of life can take flight in unexpected ways. George Dimmitt was small in stature but big in his vision. The Methodist minister was entrusted with Wesley Life's leadership in 1953 after having been handed the torch from his predecessor, Reverend Orrin Young. Under George's leadership, Wesley Life grew from serving 25 residents to caring for older adults in 3 different retirement communities in Iowa. In the years that followed, we grew to 5 communities, enhancing the lives of several hundred people daily. The movement of life expands as the world changes. In 2003, the leadership torch was passed to Rob Kresinger. Rob wasted no time in furthering the vision of previous leaders, building on the foundational cornerstones and challenging long-held beliefs about aging services. Those stimulating beliefs moved us to a new challenge. How will we reimagine senior living to simply living? And how will we create experiences to help people live longer, healthier lives? We answered those questions with action, establishing new services, supporting new audiences, creating new possibilities, and becoming Iowa's largest and most comprehensive network of health and well-being services, impacting as many as 10,000 lives annually. And our responsiveness to the needs of the underserved was, and remains, immediate, consistent, and driven by compassion. The movement of life continues to drive us forward. As we reimagine, we think back to those who made this work possible. At 75 years young, we know our work is not done. Our movement is a vision away from the stigma that aging means decline and toward the experience of not growing old, but growing whole. The movement of life can teach us that the future is ours for the making, that life transitions are ours to embrace, that at any age, there is a purposeful life to be lived. Aging happens not to you, but by you, and together, we have the opportunity to live a life of continued growth, experience, engagement, and meaning, regardless of physical, social, or economic circumstances. Our movement is to be the most dynamic and inclusive champion to revolutionize the experience of aging. The way forward is a change in belief, in narrative, and in action. The way forward is the recognition of the beauty of a full life. This is the Wesley Life way. This movement is yours and ours together. Join us.
So many great thoughts in that short video. I'm honored right now to introduce someone whose name is known to most of you. His presence and identity are synonymous with the Wesley Life mission and vision. We mark this milestone. We are all interested to hear what he has to say, where Wesley Life has come from and where it's going. He's been with Wesley Life 26 years. Next year will mark his 20th year as president and CEO. Please help me welcome to the stage Mr. Rob Kretzinger.
All right. So, welcome on behalf of our board of directors, our executive team at Wesley Life. A very warm welcome, and thank you on a nice, warm, sunny day in Iowa. You chose to spend time with us. Before we get started, I really want to just emphasize that this is an important day. This is a milestone that, as I'm hearing all that and seeing it, the emotions come up. I get a little bit nervous, and I'm looking out in the crowd right now, and it just continues to amp up my nerves just to say this is as much about you folks as it is about us. All of you are here because you have been connected with or touched by our ministry in some way, either as a team member, as a donor, as a business partner, as a board member. So just to help me with my nerves, could you stand up if you are a team member at Wesley Life and attending today? I want to recognize those folks. Appreciate you coming. So we have representatives from across the state. So if you are a missional partner, and what I mean by that, a donor or a business partner or a volunteer, could you stand up? Be recognized. Thank you. And this might be a smaller group, but our board members and our executive team together, could you stand up? There's quite a few here. Past board members as well, please. I know there's lots of those folks. So thank you for that. So before we get started, that was helpful to me, so thank you. Before we get started, I want to recognize and thank Amy Hutchins. I got to find her there. She planned this party. Just think of the idea of planning a birthday party for 600 people. And she took care of the video and all of the planning of this venue, the meal, even a 75-year signature cocktail that's coming later this afternoon. So she's done a fantastic job, and we want to thank her for that. Right now, she has two very concerning things on her mind. One, will I stay on script? Which probably not. And two, will I get emotional? And I've been sitting next to our guest speaker and enjoying hearing about this whole field of aging, this longevity, this happiness, health, and wellness thing that we're talking about. And it's all based in evidence-based research. And I said, my problem, I started to say, is that I get emotional as I get older. It's how it's manifested in me. So it's the people, it's the places, it's the events. And, so the anecdote for this was I wrote the script out, and last night I was visiting with my wife about it, and I started to go through it, and there were people that I said, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about that one. I can't talk. There was little left that I could talk about without really getting emotional, and I disliked that. And she said, well, just write it out, type it out, and if you get nervous, have someone come up and read it. So if I get nervous, my wife is going to come up and read this. Because if I go down like Tyson in the ninth, it's not going to be pretty. I know that each of you have a unique introduction to who Wesley Life is, and it's unique to you. It might be short, it might be long for your whole life, or in some different way, and it's unique to you. And I would just ask you to think about that sometime today, later, and hold on to that. Hear the message that we have today about the past, the current, and the future. And hold on to your contribution, because as I said earlier, this is about you as much as it is us. I have some unique perspective too, because I appreciate the introduction, because some of you have heard or maybe believe that I've been here the entire 75 years. And that's not true. May look that way. We've had a newsflash, the last 2 years have been kind of rough. But it has been 26 years. And I've had some incredible experiences and blessings working with our people, and I want to share a few of those. And I thought the best way to do that was to share the first anniversary. This is different than what I shared with you. The first anniversary, the 50th anniversary, and our 60th anniversary. So to begin with the 50th, right in the middle, I had just arrived in 1996 in the fall, and my wife still lived up with our children, who were 5, 3, and like 6 months old. And by the way, that 6-month-old is going to deliver any moment, so I'm a little nervous about that. But they were young, and so I was living in the basement of Wesley Acres. And you can find out everything imaginable about an organization by living in the basement of Wesley Acres. All the gossip, all the good stuff, but also what was foundational about this organization. Because it really, and this is going to make the Wesley Acres folks really feel significant, because that's really where the ministry began, was really at 3520 Grand Avenue in Des Moines, Iowa in 1947. And it's just some fantastic experiences there. On the 50th, after I'd arrived, I don't know if I got the short stick. I hadn't been there very long, and I was a young guy at that time, and I was told to go pick up our guest speaker, who, by the way, was also from California, where our guest speaker's from. And I was not prepared for that. I was just excited that I had a job in Iowa so we could raise our children, because we're Iowans. And, they gave me a green Taurus. That was pretty spectacular. Ugliest car I think I've ever owned, but it was a green metallic. And I got a bag phone. And the bag phone had 30 minutes a month for the bag phone. And so I was pretty darn excited about that. And I used to use that bag phone to call my wife when I was coming back from like Heritage House, or Housing was our furthest distance communities, and I wanted to let her know I was coming home, and I would check in and just say, hey, I'm on my way home, and then she'd start to chit-chat, and I'd say, yeah, that's all good, but I only got 30 minutes for the month, and I don't know what happens after the month, and I don't want to find out. So the green Taurus is a story in of itself, but I got the short stick to go and get the guest speaker. And the guest speaker was coming from California. He had requested a first-class seat for him and his handler. Our guest speaker didn't do that. And he was a pastor from California. And some of you might have heard of him. His name was Reverend Robert Schuller. And I don't know was anybody at the 50th? Or I tell the rest of the story, maybe not. So I went out with my minivan, and I don't know why I had the minivan that day for some reason instead of the green Taurus, but I had it. And when I had to go to the airport, I took the car seat. I remember throwing it in the back. And I don't know about any of you, and I know there's some young parents out there. What's underneath the bottom of the car seat is French fries and other different things. But anyway, I got there just in time, and the handler was there, and there came Reverend Robert Schuller, and he seemed awfully grumpy. Wasn't excited to see me. Got in the back of the minivan. The handler got in the front. Didn't say a lot to me. Well, he's had a long flight. And through the rest of that trip, from there to Wesley Acres, then on to the Civic Center, and we had a packed crowd, he didn't say a word. And then when he came in, he just lit up and came into the group. And I found that interesting, but the message was around happiness. He was a happiness preacher, if you will. And we've had people from all around that came to see him. And that was quite interesting, and I reflected on that quite a bit and trying to remember what he said and what he left us with. And I can't remember a darn thing. It didn't resonate. Well, here's the 60th. And who was at our 60th? Anybody in the room? Okay, thank you, Janet, for participating. Anybody else? Okay, at the 60th, my favorite person, Reverend Governor Robert Ray, who we had the opportunity and privilege to serve at Wesley Acres, but he was at the 60th. And here's a guy that was built his entire, this is not political, one side or the other, all about civility and kindness. And he wove that story in the story of Wesley Life and how kind, and he was one of our original board members back in the 1940s, late 1940s, as a young man, which was fantastic. And people still remember that. And what I knew about Governor Ray, I was in Boise State, if anybody recalls what that was. And he had just ended his career, and if he ran for office, then he came and spoke with you. And I remember the thing that he did, the most powerful memory of Governor Ray was how he welcomed the Laotian population to the state of Iowa. And a lot of those people worked for us. And I recall some of those people who've worked for us for 30 years come up to Governor Ray and thanked him. And that connection, that's what I want, again, for you to get, is we're all connected in this small state of Iowa. And I used to say we're Iowans caring for Iowans until we moved into Illinois. And I can't say that anymore. But so proud of that. Yeah, all right, that helps. So let me go a little bit deeper here. I wasn't at the first, but I found this morning because I wanted to find something from the archives. I've been going through the archives a lot lately. And this is pretty cool. I was at our board meeting not that long ago and read some things from the very first CEO, who they called Commandant, I think. No, it was General Superintendent. And he was from, back then it was United Methodist Ministers who led this organization. George Dimmitt, if you saw him up there, just an incredible, incredible leader. But before him was a guy named Orrin Young. And I discovered, and I kind of probably shocked Amy here a little bit. There was someone before Orrin Young named George Lawton, and he lasted a very short time, 4 months. And it really was, here's a gift of this beautiful Westchester house, but it needs to be restored and readied for people to move in. And I was so impressed that he held in there that long, kept the flame lit that long, and then handed it on to Orrin Young, who had the challenge of raising the funds. And it took 2 years, honestly, to go from here's the house to here we're opening the doors for the first people. And he really was, without Orrin Young, we wouldn't be here. I mean, he worked tirelessly to raise the funds needed to get that building built. And in the very first anniversary, so this would be 1949, because it took a little while to get the money, rebuild the building. And I wanted to share with you that the rules back then, when someone applied, and this is for the residents, this is for all of us, you had one qualification. You had to be of sound mind and moral character, good moral character. And I'm not sure who was the judge of that, but that's how you were allowed to come into Wesley Acres. And the board members would go through a discernment process to let folks in. But I wanted to read for you the first 7 people. Dr. C.B. Fountain, who was from Des Moines. Dr. John Hillman, who was a former president of Simpson College. Mrs. Minnie Hamilton from Indianola. Mrs. Anna Davis from Des Moines. Edith Lathrop from Guthrie Center. Miss Lucille Lyon from Des Moines. Mrs. Harriet Seeds from Davenport. And that we had 5 employees at that time. Miss Phila Taylor, Miss Ione Lee, Reverend Orrin Young, superintendent, Mrs. Orrin Young, who was the secretary and bookkeeper, and Mr. Claude Shedd, the part-time maintenance man. So those were the folks. And the first year, I did a little research about Phila. Had never heard that name. I shared this with a lot of our leaders just yesterday. And Phila, she was what was called a deaconess in the Methodist Church. And she had devoted her whole life to ministry. She'd worked in various different capacities. But at the age of 67, in 1947. At age 67, she decided she wanted to be a nurse and serve at Wesley Acres at age 67, which tells you there is an encore career for everybody. And she wrote a prayer that was used every day at the Chamberlain home, and it started on the first-year anniversary, and I have it here. I would like to read it. God bless the corners of this home. Be our guardian guest. Bless the hearth and bless the board. Bless each place of rest. Bless the doors that you open wide to strangers as to kin. Bless each crystal window pane. Let the sunlight in. Bless the trees we love so well, every sturdy wall, the peace of man, the peace of God, the peace of love and all. I think that's extremely relevant still today. As our ministry has expanded and grown, I had someone tell me the last 12 years we've grown more than the previous 60 plus combined. And I thought, well, how is that possible? Some days it really feels possible. Other days it's just like, wow, we really have made an impact. And I've made this, I really believe that people change because they're either inspired or they're desperate. And I think our change has been driven by inspiration. We have inspirational leaders. We have an inspirational board. I was sharing the things that I've gotten away with our board is incredible. The risks that I've taken, I can't believe that they've allowed me to do that. And the experimentation that we've had with our leadership team and our residents that are opening themselves up to new ways of approaches has been fantastic. So in closing here, I'd like to at least, so when they sat down for the first-year anniversary, those people were in attendance, plus the Bishop of the United Methodist Conference and a few guests. They had this menu. And maybe, tell if you would have liked this instead of what we had. Roasted chicken noodles, dressing, green beans, mashed potatoes, cranberry salad on lettuce, jelly pickles, candy apples, bread, coffee, pumpkin pie, all cooked by Mrs. Orrin Young's wife. And I've discovered, and this is a secret recipe by Edith Hansen, it says secret. It's her white cake, and I'm not going to share it. We're going to make it, and I'll let you know how it goes. But so at this time, I don't know if I introduce our speaker or if she's probably going to be introduced by the speaker, but by the video. But I'm so excited to have her here. She is one of the thought leaders in our space across the country in terms of how do you live a longer, healthier, better life? What are the things that we need to do? What does research tell us? How are the things that who you spend time with matters. Where you spend time, the things that you spend time on. So at this point, I'll turn it over.
You going up? Lisa wrote, I don't want to make Okay, as I was listening to that menu from the 1-year anniversary, right? 1 year. So that party, I did a little research too. The party was about 45 minutes long. The nap after lunch was about 2.5 hours. That menu sounded amazing. All right, so Dr. Carstensen is the Farley S. Dickinson Jr. Professor in Public Policy and Professor of Psychology at Stanford University, where she is founding director of the Stanford University Center on Longevity and the principal investigator for the Stanford Lifespan Development Laboratory. She is the author of A Long, Bright Future, Happiness, Health, and Financial Security in an Era of Increased Longevity, receiving numerous awards and honors, the American Psychological Association, the Guggenheim Foundation. Her essays and opinion pieces have appeared in the New York Times, Time Magazine, and the Boston Globe. She is here to talk to us today about the new map of life. A research study at its core reflects the work of 10 Stanford fellows who worked tirelessly for 2 years to analyze and envision critical domains of life that must change to support the inevitable and upcoming 100-year lifespan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Carstensen.
jumped the gun. Thank you, Mark. That was very generous. Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here for this incredible celebration. I have to say, I forgot that I had to get up and speak this afternoon because I got absorbed in a conversation with Rob Kretzinger about Wesley Life and the work that's been done over the decades, and it's inspirational. And before I go any farther, I want to give a shout out to Amy Hutchins. My goodness. Your creativity, attention to detail is amazing, but your warmth and graciousness, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, when I first began my conversations with Rob and Amy about coming to join you for this celebration, it was like immediately apparent to us that we shared a really similar vision and a similar mission for this point in history and what we need to do. People are living longer. That knowledge has seeped into our collective consciousness, so I think people are aware of that now. And mostly there is concern. I mean, there's so much concern about our society, about productivity, about caring for our older relatives, about concerns about our future, our future selves. So much concern, and we have a lot of work to do. But to paraphrase a former colleague at Stanford, John Gardner, who also is credited with the creation of Medicare, some other major programs, we are faced with an enormous opportunity disguised as an insolvable problem. And that is, for me, how this longevity experience, oops, that's two, can I go backwards? There, is being felt by most people. Wesley Life has long believed that longer lives are an opportunity for engagement, for purpose, for meaning, and regardless of physical or social or economic circumstances, their aim is to build a world that supports people toward that aim. And when we began this initiative that I'll tell you about this afternoon, the New Map of Life, in one of the first meetings we were having about all the different things we needed to change and do, and the science and the technology and the social changes, at one point we turned to one another and said, yeah, but what is all this for? I mean, what are we aiming for? What's the big goal? And we agreed very quickly that it was to build a world where at every stage in life, people have the opportunity to have a sense of belonging and purpose and worth. And I feel like that is a common mission and belief at the Center on Longevity and with the work that you do at Wesley Life. So for me, it's such an honor and a privilege to be here, and congratulations to all of you for this celebration of 75 years. So my plan this afternoon is to talk about longer life, longevity, how we got here, what we can expect in the future, what's going on, why we're living longer, what's not going on actually, and to talk some about what we've been learning about aging over the last 20, 30 years. I often say a lot of what we've learned about aging is how wrong we were about aging, a lot of the beliefs, so I'll talk a little bit about some of that. And then I want to talk about charting a path forward, a new map of life, a new way of looking at lives and drawing life maps as we come to approach a time where we routinely see century-long lives. Well, let me start by zooming out, and I mean really zooming out into evolutionary history. For most of human evolution, life was short. We don't know exactly what it was, but it was really short. The estimates when we were evolving on the African plains was life expectancy was somewhere between 18 and 20. And so that's barely long enough to ensure survival of the species. You have to grow old enough to be able to reproduce and then hang around long enough to make sure those little ones can grow up and be old enough to be able to reproduce. So evolution began to act on life expectancy. It inched up a tiny bit, but it acted in the way that evolution acts, at a snail-like pace. And lives got slightly longer, slightly longer. You're looking, if you can't see the details in this slide, that's 3,000, 5,000 years ago at the beginning on to the far left. And then we come up to more modern times. And life expectancy in the mid-1800s had reached about the mid-30s, just a couple hundred years ago. And then by 1900, in the United States, life expectancy was 47. And at the end of that century, it went to 77. So across the millennia of human evolution, we saw life expectancy go up just a tiny bit. And then in a century, not in 1,000 years, in a century, we nearly doubled the length of our lives. And I think this is always important to point out because in my analysis, that's why this aging thing feels so tense. That's why we have such a struggle with it, because growing old en masse is brand new for humans. This is very, very new. And we humans are creatures of culture. We tend to look to the past and to others to say what we should be doing and how we should be living. But suddenly looking backwards doesn't make sense anymore because the lives that people are living today are so much longer. So in 1 century, we added more years to life expectancy than we added across all prior years of human evolution combined. In a blink of an eye, in historical terms, we doubled the length of our lives. Well, as we saw life expectancy going up and going up and going up, there became a lot of interest in lifespan, that is the capacity to live for a long time. So how long can humans live? And I should tell you, bottom line answer to this is we don't know. There's a lot of debate about it among biologists and biodemographers. But we do know that lifespan, the capacity, has to be at least 122 because the reigning champ of longevity is a woman named Jean-Louis Calment, who died in 1997 at the age of 122. Now, I love to tell stories about her because she was a wonderful character. She lived in her own home through almost all of her life. She rode a bicycle till she was 110. She smoked, and she drank. I like her, you know, she just, she played herself in a movie in 1990 called Vincent van Gogh, Vincent and Me. She'd actually met him, so she played herself. That made her the oldest actress of all time at 114. She made a rap album a couple years after that. And reporters would come and interview her on her birthdays as she got older and older. And when she was 120, a reporter had said to her, "What sort of a future do you envision?" And Calment just stares at her for a minute and says, "A very short one." But my favorite Calment story, hands down, is about a property deal that she made at the ripe old age of 90. So as I say, she lived in her own home. It was in the French city of Arles, and the family home, and she intended to live out her life there, and she almost did, by the way. But there was this lawyer. He was 47 years old. He lived also in Arles, and he really wanted to buy the house. And he would make her an offer, and she'd turn him down. And he'd go away for a couple of weeks. He'd come back. He'd make her a better offer. She'd turn him down. And this went on for some time. And one day, he arrives on her doorstep, and he says, "I've got a proposition for you. I will pay you $400 a month for the rest of your life if you will deed the house to me on your death." And Calment thinks about it, and she says, "Okay." And they draw up a contract, and over the next 30 years, He paid her more than 3 times the value of her home. They became friends over the years, and he attended her 120th, and they were overheard talking, and she had turned to him at one point and said, "You know, we all make bad deals." She outlived him by 2 years. He never did get the house. That is a bad deal. But that's lifespan. That's a story about capacity. How long is it possible for humans to live? And as I say, we don't know what that number is. But lifespan capacity increases in how long we can live had nothing to do with the kinds of changes that we're going through today. That's a very different story. Now, across the same years that life expectancy was going up, the average length of lives, the average American woman had half as many babies. So the same century, 20th century, we add 30 years to life expectancy with half as many children, and that's what creates aging societies. So we could have had just as many older people as younger people. We would have had a much larger population, but that's not what happened. We had fewer children, we lived longer, and that meant that the percentage, the distribution of age in a population shifted over time. So in 1900, 4% of the population in this country was over 65. Today it's about 14%, and it'll go to over 20% by 2050. And by the way, we are the young kids on the block compared to many other countries in the world, lots of Western European countries and parts of Asia, where life expectancy is longer and the percentage of older people in a population is much greater. In Japan, 28% of the population today is over 65. And that percentage is expected to go somewhere between 35 and 40% by 2050. Now that's a game changer. That's a very different population when 40% of people are over 65. But still, lifespan, as I say, had nothing to do with these kinds of changes. It's not that we're somehow genetically hardier than our ancestors were 10,000 years ago. What changed were the odds of making it to old age. That's what changed. So at the turn of the century, when women were having 4.2 babies, I like the decimal points here, childhood mortality was very high. 25% of babies died before they reached 5. Many more died by the time they reached 12. And death was common at all ages. In fact, death itself was not strongly associated with old age because people died of any age. It was the flu or gastrointestinal illness, foodborne disease that killed most people, acute diseases. You'd get sick, you'd go to bed, you'd be dead a couple weeks later. That was how people died. And it was the babies who were so vulnerable. And our ancestors said, enough. We need to invest in science and technology, in medicine and sanitation and education. We are going to build a world that supports young life. And they were spectacularly successful. Purifying waterways, sanitizing water and food sources, providing agricultural technologies that now allowed fresh foods to be available throughout the year, putting public education in place in every state in this great country so that all children, not just the privileged few, could learn how to read and write. And education today is one of the best predictors of life expectancy. They build a world to protect the young ones, and they did a great job, and that meant that the young ones survived those critical years, and they, and now I should say we, had the opportunity to grow old. That's the story. So it's not that we're somehow hardier or able to live longer and longer and longer. It's that we aren't dying early. Our ancestors in the 20th century essentially nearly eliminated premature death. and gave us a gift of 30 extra years in life. So what's happened to this population pyramid that you see on the slide, where you have many young ones at the bottom, winnowed to a tiny peak at the top, that population pyramid is being reshaped into a rectangle where the vast majority of babies born for the first time in history can expect to grow old, can expect to live out their full lives. I look at numbers like this. I don't know if you're the kind of people who can get chills from biostatistics. My people. These would do it. It feels emotional. Look what they did. I mean, imagine what your great-grandmothers and grandfathers would have thought if you said, the babies don't die anymore. They're able to live out their whole lives. They're able to grow old. This is a spectacular achievement. And you can now see that we have reached a point in history where 4 and 5 generations will routinely be alive at the same time. Brand new, never happened before. You know how people like to say, back in the old days, all the generations lived together under one roof? Not true. They were dead. People didn't live long enough to have lots of it was not the typical household. Yes, some families did that, but remember, 4% of people were over 65 just a little over 100 years ago. But that's changed now. To put this in perspective, a 20-year-old male today has a better chance of having a living grandmother than a 20-year-old male had in 1900 of having a living mother. That's the change that's occurred. And you know, it's an extraordinary achievement. You would think we humans would be dancing in the streets, you know, celebrating more time to spend with our loved ones, to chase our dreams, more time to realize our goals. But that's not the typical way that we are experiencing longer lives. Instead, are we getting here? Instead, we're mostly worried. I don't know, we lost a slide in there, that's okay. We're pretty dreary about it. You know, as I was saying when I first began my remarks, when you talk about population aging, aging societies, we kind of have this white-knuckled, brace yourself kind of approach to it. And I don't mean to minimize the work that we have to do. We have a lot of problems and we have a lot of things we need to solve. But if you only count all the things that go wrong, if you only focus on bracing for the fall, you will not realize the opportunity that we have before us. And that's why we need to shift the way we're thinking about longevity. Now, what I want to do for the next few minutes is to just show you some numbers about research that suggests that a lot of our assumptions about what aging's like and what older people are like have been wrong. And there are kind of two main reasons for that. One is that we used to think aging happened pretty similarly for all people, and that is mostly it was this downward steady decline. Turns out that's not the case. We see lots of stepwise kinds of trajectories where, yes, most of us get sick before we die. And by the way, deaths so far, 100%. So yes. But a lot of people function really well until the last year of their life or the last few months of their life, whereas other people are showing a kind of a steady decline downward. So we see lots of variability. On almost any measure you look at, you see more variability in older people than you see in younger, middle-aged, young people. So we see lots of individual trajectories. And that's something we've just become to understand and also be able to predict, by the way, which is really important. The other thing we've learned is that aging is changing over historical time. Older people today are not the same as older people 50 years ago, 60 years ago, even 20 years ago. There are lots of changes that have been happening over history. This is Tom Moore Some of you may have heard of him during COVID. He decided to earn money for the National Health Service in the UK by walking laps. And it turns out he started walking laps around his house, and as people learned more about it, they started betting on it and investing it and challenging him. And he raised $40 million for the British health system and became a national hero. Today we see people like Very G, who after many years as a teacher, who retired in her 60s, decided to take up the cello again and is a distinguished cellist. We're seeing more and more people staying in the workforce into very advanced ages and really leading businesses and industries. We see older women who have been dancers forming schools and forums to celebrate and teach young girls about dance. We see the idea of exercise shifting from something that we used to think of for young people, and now we say, no, exercise is something absolutely for older people. Young people can if they want, older people absolutely have to exercise. This is a man who's been teaching fitness classes at the Y for decades. And of course, we're seeing families change, where little children are coming to benefit from generations that, as I said a moment ago, in very recent times just never existed. This is Hayes, the daughter of one of my former graduate students, and her great-grandmother. So aging's changing. People aren't the same as they used to be when they reached various age pinnacles. And so let me give you some numbers here. If we think about health, every generation of people who have reached 65, have arrived at old age over the last 50 years, every birth cohort has been healthier than the one before it, functionally healthy. Now, you can measure health in a lot of different ways. One way you can measure health is what are your odds of dying at different ages. And you know how people like to say 60 is the new 40? Well, 68 really is the new 59. So let me show you how an economist colleague of mine, John Chauvin, calculates this. What Chauvin argues is that if you reach the odds of dying, if your odds of dying are 2% in the coming year, we're going to call you old. And what he shows is that in 1970, men, these are the numbers for men, when they were 59, had a 2% chance of dying in the following year. But that has gone to 69. And for women, we see same kinds of trends, only of course it looks better because women live longer. So for women, 73 is the new 65. So again, 1970, when women reached 65, they were at that 2% mark. But today they don't reach that until they're 73. So we've pushed out disability, we've pushed out poor health farther into the future. So most people, through most of the added years in adulthood, are really reasonably, functionally healthy. I keep saying functional here because that's different than how many diseases you have. Now, you've seen headlines with, the number of diseases are going up and people are sicker. True, we have more chronic diseases, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol. We have conditions that are chronic conditions. But I could have all of those and be standing here and talking with you and living my life as I will. So functional health has gotten better, even though we're counting more conditions that people have, but they're living with them fairly well. So in one recent survey, some colleagues of mine just asked people at different ages, are you healthy enough to work? And you see that the percentages here go down with age, but if you go all the way to the right bar, that's people over 85, a little over half of people over 85 say, yeah, I'm healthy enough to work. Now, another half say they're not healthy enough to work, and that's the kind of thing we need to work on. But that's a change from the past. And we can predict who those people are who are healthy enough to work and those people who aren't healthy enough to work, and it has a lot to do with education. So what you see here is functional health charted as a function of how far you went in school. And what you see in that green line where you see that steady decline, the functionality there is for people who dropped out of high school, so less than a high school college education. And in the red, what you're seeing, those are people who went to 4 years of college. And what you see in between in the green are people who went to some college or some advanced training. So you see the steady downward trajectory in people with low levels of education, but in higher levels of education, if you look at here in the red line, nearly 80% of people with a college degree are functionally healthy into their mid-70s. So we see very different trajectories as a function of education. And here's the good news. Education has been changing over historical time. And I often think a lot of stereotypes we hold about feeble, frail, older people are actually about low education and age than they are about age. So if we look back just to 1970, 40% of people in this country had not graduated from high school. Today, we have very high school graduation rates, and we're seeing those aging trajectories look very different for people with higher levels of education. Aging is changing. Some of it has to do with education, some of it has to do with other kinds of health breakthroughs and health care, treatment for heart disease. So we've been making different kinds of breakthroughs medically, but a big piece of this story is about education, which of course is unlikely to be about how many years you spent sitting in a classroom, but more about what education does to shift that life trajectory, what kind of job you get, what kind of neighborhood you live in, how much certainty and confidence you have in your security and your standing in the world. Aging's changing. Now, we do see changes with age, and we see it physically, and we see it cognitively, we see it in our brains. And one very reliable change that we see with age is a decline in processing speed and efficiency. That's about new learning, the uptake of something brand new. How fast and efficiently can you learn something new? And we have long believed that just steadily declines. And there actually is some evidence that we see some decline, although it looks like we've been exaggerating that decline over time. So we're a little less agile in the uptake of something brand new. But over the same years, we know more. So even though processing speed, the speed of new learning, may be going down somewhat, we know more because we've had more years to learn, and there's nothing about aging that makes you unable to retrieve that information that you've learned. So people know more. And by the way, we've also underestimated knowledge because we don't really measure expertise. We measure general knowledge. And what we've thought is that this makes functioning harder, especially in situations where complex new learning and the integration of information is demanded. Like if you're a pilot, an airline pilot, we would certainly not want old people to be pilots, right? To take in all this information, integrate it, act on it, respond to it. And that's why for a long time we've had very young retirement ages for pilots. That's been changing a little bit lately, and it really began to change more in 2007, which, as some of you may remember, was the year, no, it was 2009, sorry. That was the year that Flight 1549, US Airways flight, encountered a flock of birds that flew into the engines, and the plane was going down. And the pilot, a man who was just about to retire because of mandatory retirement, Chesley Sullenberg, who became known as Captain Sully, was flying that plane and navigated a landing in the Hudson next to Manhattan so skillfully that all 250 passengers, including one baby, were able to walk off that plane unharmed. Imagine if that plane had landed on the skyscrapers in Manhattan. And what was really interesting was he began to be interviewed all the time, and people kept asking him the question, "What were you thinking?" And what Sully said was, "Nothing. I wasn't thinking. I just went on into an automatic state. I knew what to do, and I just did it. I wasn't thinking at all." And it was really interesting because psychologists have been studying something called gist learning. This sense that you've been there before, that you know what you're doing. Mark has this when he comes up and oversees meetings. You just kind of, you've been there, you know the feel. And it turns out now we understand that a lot of older people are doing better on a lot of kinds of tasks in a similar way. So there's a study of emergency room physicians, and they compared older, experienced physicians to the new residents who had the most current knowledge, just out of, still studying, but, sort of just out of medical school. And they compared them on their accuracy and speed in diagnosing people who had a heart attack, a myocardial infarction, when they came into the ER. And what happened is that the older, experienced physicians were much better at this than the residents were. And it seemed that what happened, the residents went down a checklist, blue lips, fever, kind of do this. And an experienced physician just looked at the person and said, OR. There's something that changes with knowledge that we haven't understood very well. But it's not about speed of new learning, although it increases the speed and the ability to sort of match an idea, a concept, to a particular array of information. And that seems to get better with age. That's a skill that is needed in daily life a lot. New learning, brand new situations, are actually encountered increasingly rarely as we get older because we've been around for a long time. So that's a story of cognition that's also changing. And another piece of the story of cognition is that dementia rates are falling. The incidence of dementia is going down over historical time, and it looks like that's related to education. It fell 20% between 2000 and 2013. That's a lot of decline. And here's one of the best kept stories yet about aging, and that's about emotion. And I thought of you, Rob, when you were making your remarks earlier and thinking about emotion and aging. It turns out one of the best kept secrets about aging is that older people are happier, better emotionally, better able to solve emotionally charged problems, more likely to forgive, more likely to appreciate, more likely to experience those kinds of mixed emotions that bring deep joy along with a tear in the eye. It's a perspective that brings about some of the richest emotions humans ever have, very complex emotions. Is it happy like happy-go-lucky? No. It is a savoring of the preciousness of life. That changes with age. So what we have here in societies that are aging is arguably the only natural resource that's actually growing. That is, populations, numbers of older people who are knowledgeable, motivated to do good, better educated than any in history, and emotionally stable. That is not a group that you want to say, go away, make room for the younger ones. We need all hands on deck. And an aging population that looks like that is one that we should be celebrating. Now, science is just beginning to turn seriously to aging. We didn't think about it much until relatively recently. because there weren't many older people, and now people are beginning to really try to slow the aging process. Now we see salacious headlines like this one. The answer to that, I believe, is no. Thank goodness. But what the research is underlying headlines like that is research about increasing health span. And for the first time, scientists are beginning to address the increase in virtually all diseases that comes with age, and to say, we shouldn't think of aging and disease as the same thing. They're separable. Maybe we can slow the physiology of aging so that people stay healthier longer. And of course, one major goal at this point in history is to have health spans, healthy lives that align very closely to our lifespans, how long we live. And we're beginning to make real progress there. Scientists are finding ways to kill off inflammatory cells that many people think are the cause of aging. So there's a set of molecules that can selectively target senescent cells. Scientists may be able to develop in coming years a kind of a pharmaceutical intervention that would slow those processes that make us more likely to get heart disease, cancer, arthritis. That work is really exciting. As is work in technologies, and I think especially health technologies, that will no doubt lead to major breakthroughs in people's functional health. Many of you wear these clunky watches that measure your steps and your heart rate and respiration and sleep and things like that. We'll think about these like mainframe computers in the coming years, when instead of wearing a gadget like this, we can just have tattooed flexible polymers onto our skin, and it will measure heart rate and temperature and glucose and give us immediate feedback about how our bodies are responding to the foods that we're eating or the exercise we're doing, and allow us to tailor our lives and our activities and our habits so that we can stay healthier longer. This work is incredibly exciting. We're only beginning to really understand nutrition. We know it's important, and we don't know too much about what's most important. We know it's important in part because caloric restriction is the only thing we know now that can slow aging biologically in animals, and it looks like it's having the same effect in humans. This is a lot of caloric restriction, by the way. These studies have been done mostly in animals, where they give them very, very low-calorie diets, and the animals live longer. They're angry. I talked with one of the scientists who runs this research, and he says, you know, you're supposed to be doing double-blind studies. You don't know which experimental group, but I always knew which was the low-calorie group. The NIH is now doing a study with humans on caloric restriction, and if any of you are interested in being in it, they are desperate for participants. Most people aren't interested in that, and really, that's not what the science is about either. What we want to understand is, what does caloric restriction do that improves health? And then can we find another avenue, another mechanism that would allow us to get to the same place, but still being able to eat? So let me spend just a few minutes then talking about where we go from here. We've learned that aging is changing. We've learned that there's great variability in individual trajectories. We know something about predicting those trajectories. We know, by the way, that exercise is hands down the best thing right now you can do for aging, and may even be influencing the same pathways that these scientists are trying to influence through senolytics and parabiosis. Moving, exercise, keeping your heart rate up is good for emotion, it's good for the brain, it's good for your bones, it's just good for everything. It's the best thing today people can do. I like the idea of dancing because people love to do it, and it's great exercise. But if we know now that we have the potential not just to cope with an older population, but see the enormous opportunity we have of creating a world kind of like what our ancestors did for the young ones. It's our job now to do that for the second half of life, build that world so that people can thrive from 50 and beyond. And we had done a survey with Time magazine, we, the Center on Longevity, and Time several years ago, and we asked people what their goals were and their fears were about reaching 100. And most people, first of all, said, I don't want to reach 100. And the fears and the goals were, well, I hope I don't run out of money. These were the top two. What are your goals for reaching 100? I haven't run out of money, and I don't have dementia. And we said, I know Rob would agree with this, we need to raise that bar. Yeah, we do want to make sure those things happen, but if that's the bar, if that's what we're trying to achieve, then, we need to say, how do we create lives that are fulfilling and healthy and fun and engaged and purposeful and meaningful? And so we started this project, this initiative called the New Map of Life. We appointed 9 postdoctoral fellows to work with us on this project, and each one came from a different domain with lots of expertise, and they range from like climate and environmental influences to work, to education, to health technology, physical fitness, and they worked for 2 years and developed long reports about how each of those domains was operating today and what we would need to do to change them to make them better. And I'm going to tell you the key insights that we gleaned from these reports that spanned the reports. So each one of these reports, and by the way, they're all available on our website if you want to read what they were finding about financial security, about education, and so on. But we pulled them together, and this is what we concluded. One is that age diversity is a net positive for society. I can't underscore enough how important this is and how new it is. It's not just new that we're growing old, it's new that we have every age alive at the same time. We've not had this in history. What you see here on this figure in the blue lines, that's how many people at different ages, from young to old, we had just a century ago. And in the red lines, the orange lines, what you're seeing are the numbers today. We don't have an aging society, really. It's not top-heavy with old people. We have comparable numbers across the age span, and that's a resource that we've never, ever had. Imagine putting together the strength and the curiosity and the ambition of youth with the emotional stability and the intelligence and the calm and the pro-social motivation and engagement of the old. Put those groups together, there's hardly a problem we can't solve. This is an exciting resource, and we need to recognize it as such. We know that we need to begin investing in future centenarians early. One of my colleagues who works at the Center on Longevity says, if people who have this kind of shotgun approach that you just give little kids a good start, and then they'll be okay, he said, can't possibly work. We can intervene at all ages. He said, that approach means that the rest of life is palliative care after 2. But we do know that those early years are really important, and we can give kids a good start. Studies that have been done where disadvantaged children are provided with high-quality preschool and daycare find a 13% return on investment for the rest of those children's lives. It operates through many different mechanisms, from increasing graduation rates in high school to improving the overall net worth of the family so that the family household is healthier. But we know now from this work, it was done by a Nobel laureate at the University of Chicago, that investing in these little ones will have monetary returns for society. I've already mentioned that we need to align health spans, how healthy we are throughout life, with how long we live, so that we're healthy, functionally able, very late in life. And most people are thinking about it this way. What you see here are age-related trajectories that go from early life to late life for people who are very fit and for people who are not. And the critical thing here is this orange line we call the disability threshold. So for most of us, let me say for all of us, we're not going to be as physically fit and able when we're 80 as we were when we were 30, okay? So we're going to see that kind of decline. But what you see in that blue line are people who are really fit when they were 30. And that trajectory doesn't pass that disability threshold. Being able to live on your own, to do what you want, to drive a car, to make your own decisions. We can keep people above that threshold even if we see some decline. And that's the line you want to be on. We know that if we are going to live longer and work longer, and we are, then we need to keep learning throughout life. Education can't end in your early 20s if you're going to work for 60 years and you're going to live to be 100. Makes no sense. We need to rethink education so that people are learning throughout their lives. Doesn't have to happen in a classroom, but we need to embed learning into our lives, whether that's on the job or online or getting micro degrees, reading newspapers, staying engaged in paid or unpaid work. All of that involves new learning. We have an opportunity to change the way we work. And I go around and booed on a regular basis when I say we need to work longer. We do, and we need to work a lot longer for a lot of reasons. One, most people can't begin to save enough money for a 30-year retirement working 40 years. So that's one. But work is good for people. It's where most of us get a sense of purpose and engagement, where we learn. So working is good. Working the way we do now in the United States, not so much. Working more than 40 hours a week, working 2 jobs for many people, and I know a lot of you don't really take vacations, and when you do, you bring your laptops and your devices, and we need to be able to have different kinds of lives, and we can because they're longer and we're going to work longer, so we can change our models of saving, we can change our models of working, so yes, we work more years, but we don't have to wait for retirement to get from leisure. Imagine not having to outsource the care of our own children to others so that we can work more. We could take less time for work when children are little. We can stretch it out. We don't have to reach the peaks of our careers at the very same time we're caring for older relatives and little children. We can stretch that out. And we never had that opportunity before. When life expectancy was 47, you didn't have that choice. We do now. And we need to begin to rethink work. And of course, work is also going to be more age diversified. That is, the workforces will be where we will also be able to tap the ingenuity of the young, the experience of the old, and studies so far of mixed age workforces look like they're more productive than all young or all old workforces. We need to think about financial wellness. We need to think about financing century-long lives so that we can do the kinds of things I'm talking with you about this afternoon. We can work differently. We can save different kinds of pots of money, different kinds of investments that allow us to take sabbaticals, to live our lives differently, to take vacations when the kids are little, not just to wait until they're grown. We need to think about how we finance that, how we share risk as populations, insurance models, different kinds of investment portfolios. We need to give a lot of thought to that. We need to appreciate the fact that we will have many transitions in century-long lives. None of us, very few of us today live our lives exactly as we thought we would. Things happen, sometimes good things. We get a job. We fall in love with somebody we never expected we would even meet. Sometimes the person we love dies. Sometimes a new child is born. There are transitions that people make in their lives, and we need to begin to help support people making them so that when we fall, we can get back up. And when those transitions are great, we can support people in ways that allow them to savor them. The more we learn about aging, the more we learn about the impact of built environments on human well-being. And again, this was part of the conversation I was getting to have with Rob over lunch. Built environments influence not just our exposures to toxins or pollutants, which they do, but access to green spaces and access to social participation. What built environments do is provide a context that allow us to be who we are, to remain engaged socially, to visit our friends, to be with our loved ones. Environments matter, and we need to think thoughtfully about how we do that. Technologies in the future will be game-changing. This is a clothing manufacturer today in Menlo Park. They're building sensors and robotics into clothing so that you're strong enough to be able to lift yourself out of a chair without using the armrests. That will activate when people are trying to lift someone who is heavy, helping care for somebody who needs assistance. We'll be able to build that into not only exoskeletons, but microsensors that are built into clothing that'll help people live their lives better. The potential of AI, the potential of robotics is palpable. It's so exciting to think what we can do. But that's where we need to go. That's the future. I want to leave you with this. The centenarians of the 22nd century are here. They're living among us. They're the little ones that are swinging on the tire swings and playing on the play structures. Those are the centenarians of the 22nd century. And it is our job, I believe it is our duty, to build a world that is going to support them all the way through. I know we can do it. I am so appreciative of the work that Wesley Life is doing, of all of you for being part of that inspirational and aspirational community. And I look forward to more conversations about creatively embracing the very amazing gift of life that our ancestors handed to us with no strings attached. Let's use them. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you so much. Wow. Two things I really enjoy. I love meeting new people and I love learning things, and that was spectacular. So one more round of applause, please. Dr. Carstensen, that was wonderful. So we've heard a lot about natural movement. We've heard a lot about getting up and being active and making sure the joints stretch and the muscles stretch. So as a health and well-being organization, we need to work all of those elements every single day. So let's get Shannon back up on the stage. We've got our well-being team. I think we've got people scattered out. So let's get ready. We'll get up here in a moment. We're going to get the blood moving a little bit. Shannon.
Let's get moving. Okay. Yes, I did hear. Exercise is one of the best things we can do, right? So I'm going to invite the wellness team to join me. Also heard Dr. Laura Carstensen share that we need to have a little bit of fun. So we're going to do both those things at the same time. I invite you to join me and stand if you're able. And we are going to dance through the decades. Get excited. All right, so you have a decade on your table. When that decade song comes on, or if you want to do it for every decade, feel free to join us, but please dance through your decade. We're going to start with the 1940s. We're going to work our way all the way up to today, and we're going to rock the best dance from that decade. Where's Addie? Addie's our first decade. In the 1940s, we're going to do the mambo. All right, let's do the mambo. Come on. If anyone knows how to do it better than Addie, come on up. You're doing great. Becky from Housing House. Becky. All right, this crowd knows how to twist and shout. I need to take a picture of that. All right, where's Abby? There you are. Woo! Okay. Oh, I'm not doing it right.
Up, down, Say.
You can tell Abby teaches our classes every day.
I don't even know what to do like that.
John and Jen. 1980s, everybody. Oh, they got something planned. See you doing the moonwalk out there. Nice. All right, 1990. We're doing the Macarena. Y'all remember this one? Okay, this is getting everyone going. All right, 2000s. Brittany. All right, 2000s. All right, we need more crowd participation. Let's go. All right, here's our last one. Oh, they came prepared with props. Woo! A TikTok sensation from the 2020s. naturally with us, everyone. And thank you to the well-being team. Among this team, we have more than 100 years of service to Wesley Life.
Oh, my God.
Mark, you weren't on stage doing the dance.
No, all right. I want to thank Shannon for noticing I was not on stage during the dancing. I pulled a quad during lunch, so I just wanted to take it easy. So we do have a favor. We have a favor to ask everyone. If you own a blue Toyota Sienna, license plate FL244, or a Ford Red Titanium, license plate 1QR972, if you could see, no, you're not winning a prize. No, you're not. If you could see Amy in the back, please. If you could see Amy in the back. Again, a blue Toyota Sienna, license plate FL244, or a Ford Red Titanium, license plate 1QR972. Now, we just got done moving around. That was fabulous. A lot of people dancing. Laughter by far is the best medicine. So we're going to enhance our mental and emotional well-being with a big dose of that laughter medicine right now. Help me welcome to the stage a truly unique comedian with a wonderful resume, the world's cleanest comedian and speaker, Kent Rader, helps people and associations learn and experience how laughter matters in reducing stress, helping build quality of life. Kent graduated from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri, with a BS in accounting. He survived 5 years in public accounting, 12 years as a hospital CFO and CEO before becoming a professional speaker in 1997. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kent Rader.
Hey, let's give Mark a huge round of applause, everybody. You know, I was thinking when Laura was up here talking that as we age, one sign of aging is that we no longer understand the technology our generation invented, right? For me, it's a cell phone. For my parents, it's the television. I was at my mom and dad's. I hadn't gotten to see my mom and dad for 6 months during the pandemic. First day I'm there, I noticed that their television's closed caption is on Spanish. Right? And it must have been that way for a while, because when I asked Dad, why is it on Spanish? He went, su mamá el loco. Yeah. I'll tell you, my dad's dream come true was the pandemic. He finally had an excuse to sit around the house all day and watch TV. I'd call him, see what he was doing. He goes, well, I'm watching TV because I'm a patriot. When he got his first stimulus check, he called me. He said, Kent, I just got a $1,200 check from the government for watching TV. God bless America. But my dad was always very funny. My mother was the disciplinarian in our family, not my dad. Not once in my life did my mother ever say to me, wait till your father gets home. Most of the time, I was glad to see him because I knew she wouldn't kill me in front of a witness. But my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Taylor, was 100 when I had her. Yeah. She was strict, arthritic, and as cranky as she seemed, possibly choleric. And I'd been in Mrs. Taylor's class 2 weeks when I decided I'd had all of her I was going to be able to take. So my best friend, Jerry Nelson, and I, we put a live snake in Mrs. Taylor's top desk drawer because we just knew when she saw that snake, she'd jump out of her skin, right? She was up at the blackboard that day doing a math problem, you know, and every time she would write, the flab on her arms would go every which way. And her chalk breaks, and I'm thinking, now she'll get it right. She waddled over to her desk, kept right on talking about that math lesson, reached in that drawer, grabbed that snake, waddled over to the window, dropped it outside, never missed one beat of that math lesson. Recess came and Mrs. Taylor said, Kent, you and Jerry want to stick around and talk to me for just a second? And I'll show you how smart I am. I walked up to her and said, how did you know it was us? And Jerry's like, I got to find me some new friends, man. Miss Taylor said, Kent, I have 28 kids in this class. When I pulled that snake out of that drawer, 26 of them went, ah. And you two boys had the stupidest look I've ever seen on a child's face. Said, in all the 100 years I've been teaching, I had only one other boy try that. Now he's in the penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri. So I'm going to call your moms. Now, I don't know about Mrs. Nelson, but Mom was not happy to get this call. I know this because when she burst in the principal's office, she poked her finger in my chest and go, boy, when the school calls me, the best I could hope for is that you're hurt. But my mom had to be tough because like so many women of her generation, she broke down barriers in America that have given her granddaughters opportunities they take for granted today. In 1970, when women were first entering the workforce in our country, my mom was opening her own business. And many of the businessmen in our small town didn't take Mom very seriously because she's both beautiful and elegant, but so's a panther. When her banker refused to loan her money without Dad's approval, Mom changed banks, saying you didn't need his approval when I was depositing money. Right, thank you. So you can imagine my shock. When I'm 9 years old, she gets stopped for speeding. She turns into Scarlett O'Hara. She's like, oh, fiddle-dee-dee, officer. Oh, I had no idea I was driving so fast. Say, you know, I've just been so busy, what with the cooking and the cleaning. You go, ma'am, now don't you worry your pretty little head over it. You drive careful now, you hear? What was that? She goes, that is how stupid men are. I said, Mama, I'm not that stupid, am I? And she goes, you will be, baby, you will be. She was right about that, boy. My wife, Twyla, is a teacher, and she likes to travel with me during the summertime, but because she's on the no-fly list, we end up driving. And I don't mind driving, except she drags me to all those stupid roadside attractions like the Grotto in northern Iowa and the Corn Palace in South Dakota. And, oh, excuse me, the world's only Corn Palace. There's a reason for that. No one else ever was dumb enough to put the favorite food of a rodent on the outside of a building. But Twyla and I, we just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary this year. And 35 is a weird anniversary for gifts, right? You know, 15 is crystal, 25 is silver. Apparently 35 is a pistol and one bullet. Because that's what she gave me. And when I asked her, I said, is the bullet for you or me? She goes, it don't matter. One of us needs to die. But we're only halfway to my parents. My parents have been married 70 years. And I think if you ask my parents the secret to a 70-year marriage, they will tell you it's a combination of Dad's mumbling and Mom's hearing loss. The Macy's cosmetic girl asks Mom, what do you need? Dad mumbles, how about wrinkle cream? Mom doesn't hear him. Everybody's happy. But I'm proud of my parents. They've never forgotten why they fell in love, you know. My mom said my dad has always been a gentleman, and my dad said my mom is the strongest person he ever met. So I asked Twyla, I said, why do you love me? She goes, you're gone a lot. Apparently my best quality is my absence. And I don't know what Twyla does when I'm gone, but I hope she continues doing it because all summer our neighbor Vic's mowed our lawn. I'm less concerned with fidelity than I'm getting some help with the chores. Before I left this week, I said, why don't you put on something tawdry and see if you can't get Vic to clean out the gutters? But you know, when we were first together, we said stupid stuff to each other like, I want to grow old with you, having no idea what that entails. Because together we have survived mammographies, colonoscopies, biopsies. I've made Twyla suffer through every running injury I've had in the past 35 years, but she's getting back at me now because at least a dozen times a day without any sort of warning, she strips all of her clothes off because of a hot flash, which is how she got on the no-fly list. I am not minding menopause one bit because the first time in the 35 years I've known this woman, she hasn't been cold. I see you with your sweaters on, yeah. A few summers ago, I had to do back-to-back shows in Biloxi, Mississippi, New Orleans, Galveston, Texas, July in Biloxi, New Orleans, Galveston. I opened each show with, hey, why don't we have this in hell next year? It'd be cooler. I'm in Galveston on the third day of having sweat dripping places it shouldn't. Twyla looks at me and she goes, do you have a jacket? I'm cold. What are you, a lizard? But men, we change too. Don't let anybody tell you we don't. I read recently, after the age of 50, men produce significantly less testosterone, which would explain why, for the first time since puberty, I'm thinking clearly. Yeah, my mom was right. For 40 years, I was just dumber than a box of dirt. A number of years ago, my grandma Round's birthday fell the same week that they convicted Martha Stewart. So when I asked her what she wanted to do for her birthday, she wanted me to take her to the Kmart because she just knew all the Martha Stewart stuff would be on sale. Now, I hate taking Grandma to the Kmart because, first of all, she walks faster than any human being on the planet, plus she's getting smaller all the time, so I lose her like a kid. So I have Twyla go with us. Now, when in walks this attractive, rather well-developed young woman wearing this tight, low-cut blue sweater. And Twyla catches me staring at her one or two, a dozen times. Finally, Twyla goes, Kent, do you know that woman? And I went, what blue sweater? In front of everybody at Kmart, Grandma goes, weaning that boy was a waste of time. Low testosterone has caused hair loss. I'm lethargic. My family worries that I'm apathetic, but I just don't care. And one thing I don't care about are tools. I'm not the typical guy. I don't like home repairs and tools, right? Because when I was in high school, I didn't take shop class. See? You got to be a certain age to get that joke. I was in Lubbock last week, and some guy on the front row goes, you know, that's not funny. Right? Because when I was in school, quit pointing to him. Hold up your hands. Yeah. when I was in school, shop was a disaster waiting to happen. You had a bunch of 15-year-old boys all distracted by thoughts of girls using a table saw. Now, instead, I took typing. In spite of all the teasing I got from my friends, really, Kent, you're taking typing? What do you want to be, a secretary? No, Chuck, my nine-fingered friend. I don't. Well, while you're in shop class with 29 guys talking about girls, I'm in typing with 29 girls. And my mom said I'd be stupid. So consequently, it won't come as a surprise to figure out I am completely ignorant when it comes to tools and home repair, right? I don't know how to fix anything around the house. I don't want to know how to fix anything around the house. Plus, I have no need to fix anything around the house because Twyla can fix everything. Plumbing, carpentry work. 2 summers ago, she rewired our daughter Maggie's entire house. I mean, she's like Bob Vila without a beard. But when Twyla does a project, my responsibilities are to cook, stop asking stupid questions, and to go to the hardware store to buy supplies. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but the guys who work at the hardware store treat every man walking in there like he knows what he's talking about, and every woman walking in there like she doesn't. And nothing puts Twyla in a bad mood more quickly than some man being condescending to her about tools. So she sends me. The problem is I have no idea what I'm talking about. Right? She needs a new socket wrench set, you know. The kid who's helping me goes, what are you working on? And I go, some sockets. I don't know. She needs staples for her staple gun, right? I've got this number. There are 50,000 staples down at Lowe's. Not one of them number M5613. So I bought a new staple gun that had staples in it. I said I'm ignorant, not stupid, but I could do without Twyla's sarcasm. When I handed her that second staple gun, she goes, I'm glad you know how to pump gas. I'd hate to have to buy a new car every 400 miles. She sends me to the store to buy lumber. The entire drive down there, I'm rehearsing. I need 5 number 1 2x4s, 8, walk in, find the lumber guy and go, hey son, I need 5 number 1 2x4s, 8 feet long. Perfect. He goes, oak or pine? I think, come on, Kent, you watch those remodeling shows, you ought to be able to do this. So I go, well, we're working up there in the attic, what would you suggest? He goes, well, it depends. Are you working on the joist? Oh, God. Hold on here a second. I'm going to call my contractor. Honey? Yeah, you want oak or pine? Because the lumber boy's asking. Pine? Oh, hey, when the buzzer goes off, take the meatloaf out of the oven. I go, we'll take pine. Kid goes, you called your wife? I said, yeah, and he goes, listen, man, don't feel bad. 2 months ago, some woman was in here exchanging a staple gun because her husband's too stupid to buy staples. Yeah, that makes me feel better, thanks. By applause, how many of y'all have children out there? Who all has kids? Yeah. They're awful, aren't they? Well, it doesn't start out that way, though, does it? I remember the first time I held our baby, I was so overjoyed, I cried. Who knew it would be my last happy moment on earth? Because I was ill-prepared to have kids. I thought my kids would be like my cats, right? Cats go to the bathroom in a box, they bathe themselves, and they pretty much eat anything. I mean, even one of them hockers up a fur ball, another cleans it up. Ain't that nasty? Speaking of nasty, kids quickly redefine what you think is disgusting, don't they? One night when our son Keith was a baby, we put him to bed, and a couple of minutes later, we heard him go, blah, right? For those of you children, you know nothing good comes from blah. We rushed in, he had thrown up all over everything. Twyla grabs him, she goes, listen, I'll take care of him, you clean up the crib. I go, Twyla, I can't. She goes, good heavens, Kent, you're his father, yeah? Prove it. That was a mistake. Because that quickly turned into a scene from a Jerry Springer show. But you know, Twyla, she tapped into her motherly instinct. She went and gave him a warm bath. She put on clean jammies. She even rocked him to sleep. And I tapped into my fatherly instinct. I went, here, kitty, 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 kitty. But you know, so many of the things Twyla does around our house, this baby she made wasn't finished when she brought him home from the hospital. I mean, the kid was completely helpless, and his only means of communication was to cry. So 50 times a day, day and night, I'm reduced to playing 20 questions to figure out what's wrong with this thing. Are you wet? Are you hungry? Are you constipated? Are you reading Eugene O'Neill? Why are you crying? I remember after 48 hours of no sleep when our daughter Maggie was teething, I thought, it's got to get better. Don't ever think that. Because God will go, oh yeah, watch this. And it just gets worse. They start walking. Now you have a child who has no concept of danger, plus he's mobile. But wait, it gets worse. They start going to school. Now they bring home every disease known to medicine. Flu, colds, pink eye lice, rickets. I don't know what rickets are. I just think that's funny. But wait, it gets worse. They go through puberty. Boy, you thought they were stupid before. Now they're dumber in a box of dirt. And the only way you know they even heard you is when they roll their eyes and go, whatever. Yeah, how about whatever? Your head right off your shoulders. But wait, it gets worse. They start driving. Now you have a child who's dumber in a box of dirt driving a 2,000-pound machine, go 120 miles an hour. What could go wrong? But wait, it gets worse. They go to college, Mark. And just about the time you got used to, just about the time, if you thought that worrying about them when they lived in your house was bad, wait till they are 500 miles away from home. But wait, it gets worse. They graduate from college, and just about the time you got used to never seeing them, they move back in your house. Luckily for you, you never have to see them. You're too busy working 2 jobs to pay off their music therapy degree. Too many of you know what I'm talking about. There are people in our country that want to limit our access to birth control. I think we ought to put it in the drinking water. But wait, it gets better. Grandchildren. Any of y'all have grandchildren? Yes. Yeah. Grandchildren are your reward for not having killed this child. And I am not ashamed to admit I'm finding entirely too much pleasure in the trouble Keith is having with his baby. Because watching Keith change a pooey diaper is like watching a cat hock up a fur ball. But they got him potty trained. Keith was so excited when they potty trained him. You know, he called everybody, posted it on Facebook. Next time the baby's at our house, I hear those 4 words emanating from the bathroom that we all dread. Can you wipe me? This is not potty trained. This is like teaching a pilot how to fly, but not how to land. Right? And when I walked into the bathroom, he's already assumed the position. Right? Like he's dropped a quarter on the floor. And I'm looking at him thinking, boy, his little hamstrings are going to get tired waiting on Twyla to come home. Because that was when Twyla volunteered us to watch him for a week. I go, Twyla, we are not capable of watching a 3-year-old for a week. She goes, what are you talking about? We raised 2 kids. I go, I know, we were half our age. Now, if you ever get the idea you want to watch a baby, do this simple mathematical calculation. Divide your age by the age of the child. That's how much sleep you're going to need a night. That's why 25-year-old people can have 3-year-old children and still function in society. 25 divided by 3 is 8. 8 hours sleep, right? Twyla and I are in our 50s. 50 divided by 3 is 17. We're needing 17 hours sleep at night. My mom, who's 86, watched him on Friday. She doesn't wake up till Sunday. But he loves to play. We always keep water in the bathtub because he likes to go and sit on the floor and play with his boats in the water. The day Mom watched him when I came home, she goes, now listen, when he went in there to play with his boats, I drained the water each time and put fresh, warm water in so his little fingers wouldn't get cold. Hard to believe this is the same woman that made me bathe in my brother Michael's dirty bathwater. Right? And when I complain about it, she go, oh, get in, it's not that dirty. It looks like the Gulf of Mexico. There's an oil slick, dead fish. But he loves to play Spider-Man at our house, and we always have to be the bad guy. We have to be Venom or Sandman. A couple of summers ago, Twyla gets a bright idea. She'll tape him to the refrigerator so he can bust out like he's Spider-Man. He and I are at Chick-fil-A one day, and he goes, hey, Papa Kent, when we get home, you're going to tape me to the refrigerator? So I'm talking to the lady from DHS. The boy needs to develop a filter. The other night, Keith picked him up after work and asked him, he said, Kai, have you had supper? And Kai goes, yeah, Papa Kent and I had pizza and ice cream because neither one of our moms were here. You know, like your children and grandchildren, all this boy is ever going to know is technology, you know, and he wants the latest technology all the time. You know, I cannot fathom standing in line outside the Apple store to trade a perfectly good phone for the new iPhone. He goes, but Papa Kent, it's waterproof. That way it'll still work if you drop it in the toilet. Regardless if it works. If I drop my phone in the toilet, It's staying in the toilet. But I got a new phone last winter because I dropped my old one in the toilet. And this thing is creepy, right? It seems to monitor what I do all day. After a week, when I'd wake up in the morning, it would say your commute to work is 7 minutes today, which is weird because I don't have a job. And then I realized that the directions are to our local McDonald's. You're eating too many Egg McMuffins if your phone thinks you work at McDonald's. But it's got an app for this and an app for that. I'll tell you the app I could use is one that doesn't autocorrect profanity that I type into text messages. Right? Because as perceptive as this phone is, you would think it would realize if I'm swearing, I'm angry. And changing a text message to read horse ship isn't going to make me happy. And of course, Twyla's deleted all the profanity from my phone's dictionary because Kai can read now. Hey, Papa Kent, what's horse ship? It's a ship for horses. But every time he's with me, all he does is play games on my phone. All I ever see him do is this, right? The other day he goes, hey, Papa Kent, when you were a kid, what games did your grandpa's phone have on it? My grandpa's phone didn't have games. Oh, it was a flip phone? No, it was a wall phone. What's a wall phone? I said it was connected to the wall with a wire. Oh, it had a bad battery? No, it didn't have a battery. It didn't have games. You couldn't get on the internet. You couldn't text with it. All you could do is make calls with it. That's horse ship. I really wish you guys a great anniversary, and always remember the words of Gilda Radner, who said, laughter matters. Thank you.
Kent, that was awesome. Thank you very much. You betcha, bud. Oh, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Love the closing phrase by Gilda Radner, one of my favorites. All right, we're going to wrap up our program. And as we do that, please help me welcome to the stage the chairman of the Wesley Life Board of Directors, Mr. Chad Rasmussen.
Thanks, everybody. I know it's been said, but what a wonderful event today. I guess the only thing I'd change, Amy, is don't make me follow Kent. That's good. I joined the board of directors in 2006, and back then I was president of the board of Generations Incorporated, which some of you may remember. And at that time, I took a seat that was granted to us when Wesley Life acquired Generations and all of its programs, and one of those programs was Meals on Wheels. Today, we have a board that's filled with members who are forward thinkers, passionate, and great stewards of Wesley Life. And I'd like to take this moment to thank both the current board of directors and those who've previously served on the board for continuing to challenge us to always do better and do the right thing. Once again, if we could have the current board and any past board members, please stand and be recognized if you are here. As I thought about why I've stayed involved with the organization for so long, one thing really stood out to me, and that's our team members, especially our frontline workers, volunteers, our nurses, and our drivers. They're the people that make Wesley Life who we are and have made it easy for me to stay so passionate and engaged with the organization. They're the face of Wesley, and their compassion and dedication are what brings us success and fulfillment and inspires me to support this organization. Their devotion to our residents and clients makes me very proud to be part of Wesley. Choking up like Rob is there a little bit. So the event committee reached out to me to let me know that they had many team members contact them personally to make sure we were going to recognize Rob Kretzinger for his 26 years of service. And of course, we're going to do that. So we want to take time today to honor Rob, who joined Wesley back in 1996 as Chief Operating Officer. His family members have said they were not surprised he ended up choosing the career he chose. Many of you know he became a certified nursing assistant to help pay for college. And we've heard stories that back in the 80s in Jefferson, Iowa, if a teenage Rob didn't show up on time for dinner, he could usually be found at the nursing home, sitting with the resident who was ill or lonely. And sitting with Glenda, I found he would also take her on dates to the nursing home as well. So that's the Rob who still shows up for work every day and at the foundation of every decision he makes. Back when Rob joined the organization, it was called Wesley Retirement Services. Rob worked as COO until 2003 when he was named president and CEO. And at 37, the youngest CEO in the history of the organization and one of the youngest in the entire industry. At that time, Wesley Retirement Services owned and operated 5 communities and served about 1,000 residents. Today, not even 20 years later, Wesley Life serves nearly 10,000 individuals through 12 communities and a network of at-home services. And all that growth happened under Rob's visionary leadership. Rob, thank you for your tireless dedication to Wesley Life. Thank you for your friendship. And Glenda, thank you for all the support and guidance you've given Rob and Wesley Life over the years. So Rob, we appreciate and honor you today for all you've given to this organization over the past 26 years. So to thank Rob, as well as to commemorate 75 years, Wesley Life has commissioned a custom art piece that represents much of what our organization is built on: faith, foundation, vision, inclusivity, and so much more. We'll be unveiling this special and unique art piece here today, and then producing a print for all of our communities and services to display in their locations. So please stick around and take a look and meet the artist, David Borzo, and help us celebrate. And again, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you for joining us today. As we prepare to begin our social hour, we want to take a moment to share some messages of appreciation for our team members, who are the heart of our organization and the reason we are able to enhance the health and well-being of nearly 10,000 individuals each year. Please direct your attention for a moment to the screen at the front of the room, and then join us in celebration.
I would like to say a special thank you to Amy Spangler, who's our people and culture generalist. Amy's been on our team for about a year, and she's had a huge impact. The way she makes sure that our new team members have what they need and feel comfortable and secure in their new jobs is tremendous.
Hi everyone, I'm Addie, and I just wanted to give a huge thank you to Frank and Margaret Severino here at Brio. Margaret attends almost all of my things that I've planned, and Frank is always so appreciative. Love these two both so much.
Hi, I would like to just give a shout out to Heather Frank, our executive director here at the Village. She came to us when we were on the very end of COVID, and as staff and residents and our building, we were in need of attention. And Heather came with her listening, caring, kind heart, and she has made a difference and brought hope to us. So I just want to give a shout out to her and thank you for her kindness and her loving heart.
I would like to give a big thank you and shout out to our maintenance and housekeeping team. They are some of the most hardworking individuals I've had the pleasure of working with, and I receive countless compliments from our residents and team members for the service they provide. So I'd like to thank them all for everything they do at Wesley Acres and for the positive impact that they make on our community.
Wonderful parents. I have made me feel comfortable, and they have all been friendly. I didn't expect everybody to be that way, but they have all been friendly and kind and gone overboard for me. So I have appreciated all the different.
I just want to recognize Heidi's parents for positivity and the way that she makes the residents feel like they're truly at home. Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to my coworker, Heather McCarty. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine being here and doing what we do without Heather.
I'd like to give a shout out to the culinary team for always going above and beyond for our residents when they have special needs, special requests, and always following through with them. It makes the residents feel.
And I just want to say thank you and give a huge shout out to Maddie France, who is the lifestyle coordinator for Second Floor Health Center at Wesley, because man, if you need something done, she is the girl. She goes above and beyond for the residents, and you can tell how passionate she is about this job. So shout out to Maddie. You are truly amazing at what you do.
I want to give a shout out to our wellness team. Did you know that just among our wellness directors, we have over 90 years of service to Wesley Life and WellSpire? That is a huge accomplishment, and I want to thank the wellness team for all the contributions they've made over so many years, some of them for decades, supporting our health and well-being at Wesley Life. Thank you.
Thank you again for attending. Please join us in the entertainment area for additional activities, music by the Sound Doctor, and some good fun social time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.